Alright, so before I get into it, I just want to explain that this week we're doing something a little different. We're watching the first 4 videos I ever selected for this channel. So originally, when I first started this channel, I chose 4 videos that I wanted to use to establish the 4 different color channels on this channel, the yellow, green, blue, and red. And this is the video I specifically chose to illustrate the red channel. And if I'm to be honest, most of the other videos I watched this week weren't really that important, and the real reason I decided it was important for us to review all of these videos is for what we're about to watch today, because what we're watching today is titled "The Palestinian People Do Have Rights," and this was made by the United Nations all the way back in 1979. If you remember, last week we watched a program called Israel and the Arab States, and the only reason I thought that was good to watch is because I've already watched this, but then I realized you guys have not seen this. So before we get any deeper into the Israel-Arab conflict, it's good for us to have seen this. So today, that's what we're doing. We are watching for the second time now, "The Palestinian People Do Have Rights." And I'm so excited about this. Again, I really did not care that much for ancient Egypt, animals of Africa, or the Gulf Stream, but this video, I knew I had to show this to other people. So today, that's what I am doing. We are watching "The Palestinian People Do Have Rights." Let's go. Oh man, and already we're starting with an interesting map. So hang on, before we even get to the map, I want to read what we're reading on screen right now. Alright, this film was produced at the request and under the guidance of the United Nations Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. That's quite a mouthful, but let's keep going. It was in production during the spring and summer of 1978. Important news developments have taken place since. That's pretty crazy because we just learned about what events took place in 1978, so it's actually wild that they were working on this while there were more conflicts happening. Have taken place. It appears that so far these have not materially altered either the feelings of the Palestinians interviewed here or the human conditions of most of their compatriots. And so that's pretty interesting. This program was made during a time of heightened tension within the region. And considering we're in a very similar state nowadays, we can only imagine how important the words that they said in this are going to be. Okay, so there's the title, "The Palestinian People Do Have Rights." So that's, I don't know if I should say anything about the font, but this is a very interesting font. This looks like the very classic, almost cliche Arabic font or whatever. But then beneath "the Palestinian people," you have in very plain Arial text, "Do have rights." Again, a whole essay could simply be written on the graphic design of this shot alone, but let's keep going. Let's see if we get a good look at this map first.
You are asking.
Okay, so yeah, we get a good look at this map, but we're already transitioning to something else. So let me just take one more second to look at this map. So obviously we have Israel, but then we have Gaza and we have the West Bank, both of which were occupied during this region, which is why we have these dashed lines. Interestingly, there are no dashed lines in the Golan Heights, and I can't remember if that's because the conflict that is taking place during the filming of this is the conflict in which they actually claimed the Golan Heights. It probably is, which means this map is just pretty telling for what age it is. But again, this is pretty much the same political arrangement that exists in this region today.
You are asking me what it is to be a Palestinian. Well, I think that...
Alright, so now we're fading in on these 2 Palestinian fellows. Let's hear what they have to say.
In very simple terms, it's a question of lack of identity. And unless...
So his answer to what makes a Palestinian is a lack of identity, or at least that's what they're experiencing in this moment.
You see, this man finds a place, an anchor. He will always be the stateless, the refugee, the man without an identity and who is searching for this right.
So we learned that by this point, the stateless man that had become of the Palestinian people was actually core to their identity, which is pretty telling of the circumstances the Palestinians had already gone through to get to this point. And imagine, this is like 50 years from now, so even still. So even like halfway through the Palestinians being forced off their land, they already had this sense that they were a nationless people.
It is a human right.
To be a Palestinian is to accept the status quo of wherever you happen to be.
See, again, a very interesting statement. To be a Palestinian is to accept the status quo of wherever you happen to be. Very pointed statements that I feel like I'm not even equipped to fully unpack. But you know, at least I'm able to recognize that there is some very interesting insights in there.
Without the real sense of belonging, because strictly speaking, you are operating wherever you are at the goodwill discretion of the country that is accepting you.
Yeah, so pretty much he's saying Palestinians aren't able to form their own identity because all of them are subject to some sort of foreign rule, whether it's the people who are in the countries where they fled to, or whether it's still just the Israelis. But this is good. I'm glad we're getting to hear from Palestinian peoples themselves. If you'll remember, that was my one big criticism of Israel and the Arab states, is how few Palestinians we actually got to hear from. So this is kind of remedying that.
Where he is, they tend somehow to look at him as a suspect because he does not have an identity in the sense that he does not have a country, a home.
Palestinian does not have an identity because he does not have a country or a home. So again, very, very prescient statements that are being made right now.
Is stateless.
They have come from Haifa and Jaffa, from Hebron and Jerusalem. First in 1948 as their land was occupied. They fled again in 67 and in 70, in 76 and in 78.
See, this is already doing such a better job of illustrating this problem from the Palestinian perspective. Because again, if you forget that these are the people that were forced off of their land, it completely recontextualizes this whole conflict.
Each time...
Again, they just don't have anywhere to go. Like, where are they supposed to go? Nobody will accept them. You realize the Palestinians are just the victims in this 100% of the way through it. Like, there is no victim here except for the Palestinians. So, again, I'm already enjoying the different perspective we're getting from this program compared to Israel and the Arab states. And I think a big part of that is the fact that this was produced by the United Nations rather than some private film corporation.
New hostilities had forced them to seek new shelters. Some have been refugees for over 30 years. Some were born as refugees. But no matter where they came from or where they now live,
see, they'd already been refugees for 30 years, and this was made in 79. So by modern times, pretty much every single person alive in Palestine today has been a refugee for their entire life. That's also important to understand.
These people think of themselves as Palestinians first, and most have but one dream, to return to their homes in Palestine.
Geez, that was a hard cut from those people carrying water just to a tank steamrolling some cacti. That a very purposeful hard cut, to say the least.
Since World War II, the Middle East has been the scene of continuous violence.
Geez, what's so crazy about this footage is just how similar it still looks to the Gaza of today. Like, seeing all these buildings and these bombs going off between them, it's just like I see that in the actual news, like yesterday.
In 1947, the United Nations endorsed the creation of one Arab and one Jewish state out of the British Mandate in Palestine.
Hang on, so it's saying that the United Nations embraced a two-party state, one state for the Israelis, another state for the Palestinians. Is that what I'm hearing correctly?
Under a partition plan which provided also for the establishment of an international regime in...
Okay, yeah, here it is, the partition plan.
And around Jerusalem.
Hang on, I just want to take a look at this map real quick. If this is the partition plan of 1947, I just want to see how things might have been different. So if we look, we can see that the Western Bank is pretty much the same shape. It's a little bigger than it is now. Obviously, we understand why. You can see that not only does it extend much further up the coast, but it also goes along the border with Egypt for a lot longer. And actually, had these been the borders that were agreed upon, Gaza would have been like far larger than it is now. It's so crazy to imagine a world where this is the Gaza instead of the Gaza of today. And then there's this territory all the way up here, and I've never really heard of this territory, not even the story of how the Israelis took it or anything. So it must have just been swept under the rug during one of those invasions or something and never spoken about again. But again, very interesting map, I will say. I'm curious to hear what you guys think of this map. Had this been the solidified borders of the two-state solution, do you think that would have actually worked? Obviously, I don't think it would have, but do you think this would have worked any differently than the current situation? Let me know what you think these places would be like had these been the borders that everyone agreed upon.
Israel was established in 1948, but the Palestinian Arab state never came into being. Since then, there have been 4 full-scale wars, all threats to world peace.
4 full-scale wars, all threats to world peace. So what are we learning from this? Is that this is definitely a hotbed of conflict in the Middle East. But more than that, these conflicts are not about just the Middle East. The whole world is affected by what goes on here and could be even more affected by it in the future. So it's just impressive that they were already able to recognize the conflicts that were coming out of this region could spell disaster for the rest of the world as well. It's just like we knew what was the problem so long ago, you know? Though I want to shout out the Mediterranean Sea font. This is like the same font my Greek restaurant uses for its menu. It's just it's just like it's the classic like Mediterranean font, whatever it is.
Territorial limits kept moving back and forth, and between...
Okay, yeah, we learned about Israel taking over the Sinai Peninsula last week. This is good too because we actually have some foundational knowledge as to what they're talking about because of what we watched last week.
And around, during times referred to as no war, no peace.
No war, no peace. That's another good slogan for this region of the world.
Thousands of people from all sides who fell victims to endless attacks and counterattacks.
Yeah, there it is. Israel taking the Sinai Peninsula for the second time during the 6 Days War, I think it was. Oh, and we even see the Golan Heights expand.
Could very well, indeed, find a way to coexist in Palestine with an Israel. But you see, we must get guarantees that this Israel will not expand, because ever since the existence of Israel, it has expanded onward. And they have tried to erase our identity as Palestinians. For instance, I started out to be a Palestinian. Then in 1948, I was referred to as a refugee. Then I was referred to...
Hang on, I just want to go over this guy's credentials real quick, just because it's thrown up on the screen. So this is Dr. Sari Nasir from Jordan University in Amman, and he is very good at English, so this must be a very educated man, which I feel like we need to appreciate how good this man is at speaking English and why. It's because he's a highly educated.
Then I was referred to as a Jordanian, an Egyptian, a Lebanese, a Syrian. And on the way, I heard from Golda Meir that I do not exist. And now they call me a terrorist. Eventually, you see, these people have expanded and they have tried to erase my identity.
Palestine has...
That's a pretty fair argument that, like, he doesn't really have anything else that he can say that, like, disproves them. Like, he is just, like, I don't know, a stateless person after a while.
always been the battleground of empires.
Dr. Konstantin Zuriek, Palestinian Studies Institute of Beirut. Interesting.
As well as the meeting place for...
Very weird mustache for this guy to have. Maybe not. Maybe it's actually a very pointed mustache for him to be having. It's just a very weird mustache, I guess, is all I gotta say.
The exchange of cultures. There have been waves of people that have come into it, mostly from Arabia, which is the cradle land of all the Semitic peoples. Now, these people have intermixed throughout history. They were Arabicized in the middle of the 7th century when the Arab-Muslim invasion of Palestine took place and inhabited Palestine for the long course of history.
Arab nationalists do not deny the Jewish presence of biblical times, but they point out that this was also the land of the Canaanites and the Philistines, Babylonian.
That's a pretty strong argument if you ask me. I know Jewish people argue that because like the Jews had set up in Israel like thousands of years ago that they always get to have right to it. But then yeah, obviously there were other people groups who lived in the same exact region for honestly comparable amounts of time. I don't know, I feel like the argument that this land is inherently Jewish because they were there 2,000 years ago is just really flimsy, and the narrator just did a good job of dispelling with it.
Persians and Greeks were there too, at one period or another. The region was under Roman occupation at the time of Christ. The exit.
Yeah, it really is crazy to think of how many historical empires had a foot in Israel. Or Palestine, I should say.
The exodus of the Israelites took place soon thereafter. The fall of the Roman Empire cleared the way for Arab civilization to blossom. Then the Muslim Empire was succeeded by Ottoman rule.
Oh man, I love this map too. So here we have Egypt, we have Persia, and we have Nejd. Like those are the countries of this region right now. Persia, Nejd, and Egypt. Like I never get tired of these old maps.
On the eastern shores of the Mediterranean, this rule was to last until World War I. The 19th century witnessed...
Yeah, I feel like everyone forgets that before the British owned this area, it was just another colony of the Ottomans, which is arguable considering where the Ottomans came from relative to the Middle East. But it was definitely still under foreign rule during this time. Like they did not have like native rule. I mean, that's arguable though. I don't know. I'm not an expert, so I maybe shouldn't be saying anything.
Tremendous upheavals. Europe had its Industrial Revolution, but the Middle East too was seeking a new identity. After 500 years of Ottoman rule, the idea of sovereignty had begun to revive, and many Palestinians and other Arabs launched independence movements.
See, that's interesting to think too, that even when this land was under the rule of a Muslim empire, they still desired independence. You know, it's kind of like, how will you ever really be satisfied? You know, like, I don't know. I imagine that during Ottoman rule, the Palestinians had rights akin to all the other Arabs as well. Like, they were most likely seen as completely equal to everyone else in the empire. So it's strange to think that even during this time when they had relative religious freedom and like territorial sovereignty, they still wanted more. It's interesting. Again, that's just an aspect of like human nature, I would say.
Since the Crusades, 3 religions had coexisted fairly peacefully in Palestine. But by the 1890s, new colonies of Jewish immigrants started to appear.
I think it's interesting that they do call them colonies, you know, like that's pretty accurate. It's just, I don't think everyone at this time would have been calling them Jewish colonies, but it's good that they are. It's interesting. Again, that's part of how language shapes your perception of things. Like you could call them settlements, but that doesn't really convey the same thing as colonies, even though they're pretty much the same.
The pogroms the Jews had had to endure in Europe had fostered Zionism, a doctrine calling for regroupment of the Jews in a land to be called the Land of Israel. During World War I, the British, seeking assistance for their war effort in the Middle East, wooed both the Arabs and the Zionists. To win the latter's support, in 1917 they promulgated the Balfour Declaration.
The Balfour Declaration. I feel like that's a big event in this timeline as well. We should pay attention here.
This declaration promised British support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people.
All right, so the Balfour Agreement pretty much put down in writing that the British were committing to establishing a Jewish home in the Middle East. So this is like the contract that forced their hand into creating Israel.
Although it was careful to note that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. And the population...
Yeah, see, so they already kind of understood what was going to be happening if they included that clause in their whole agreement. It hints towards the fact that they knew they were kind of going to be manhandled out of their own homes.
The nation of Palestine was over 90% Arab at that time. When the war ended, rather than becoming independent, most of the Middle East was placed under British and French administrations, under the League of Nations mandate system.
Oh, this is a cool map too. So we can see France was mostly in control of Syria and Lebanon, and then the UK was put in control of Palestine, Jordan, Iraq, and beyond. I'm still so curious about the Nejd. Is that actually what people called it back then? That's just, that's such a funny term that I feel like has not survived.
The League's covenant provided that such territories were heading for eventual self-determination and independence. For the Palestinians,
this is also such an interesting era of history that I just feel like I have a hard time wrapping my head around. Like World War I just ended and then these countries just gained like unfettered control of these regions. It's so strange. I guess it was because it was Ottoman territory. That's the tricky part that I keep forgetting. Like they weren't just conquering these areas, they were actually absorbing them from the dying Ottoman Empire.
For the Palestinian Arabs, the struggle had become twofold. They wanted termination of the mandate and repeal of the Balfour Declaration, since the establishment of a Jewish homeland meant increased immigration by Jews and appropriation by them of lands the Palestinians had owned.
Dang, this is a pretty wild riot that we're getting to watch right now. I kind of wish we had more context as to what was happening during these riots, because it looks like some sort of religious ritual is taking place or something, and then everyone's breaking out into violence. I wish we had more context.
Of lands the Palestinians had owned, inhabited, and cultivated for generations. The period between the two world wars.
Yeah, imagine being a Palestinian at this time and just like seeing the very beginning of the Israeli state, like just having a bad feeling in your stomach about these newcomers, you know? It's just like, it must have been so obvious to some of them what was happening, and yet so frustrating that they couldn't actually stop it in any meaningful way. No matter how much civil unrest they caused, you know, there was no going back once Israel got started. And I can just only imagine how frustrating it must have been for the Palestinian people at the time to just feel completely powerless in being colonized.
Witnessed a series of Palestinian demonstrations, protests, and rebellions.
If the international community had looked at the Palestine question with justice, they would have recognized that here was a majority of Palestinians and there was a minority of Jews.
Yeah, see, so that's tough because what he's saying is right. Had the international community looked at the Palestinians as equals to the Jews, they wouldn't have gotten themselves into such an unequal relationship. But because at this time, specifically, there was so much sympathy for the Jewish people after the Holocaust that pretty much anyone else's problems were just like completely ignored in order to help the Jews out, which I understand. I get wanting to help the Jews, especially in the wake of the Holocaust in World War II. It's just so unfortunate to see the same problem that affected the Jews in Europe was pretty much just recreated in the Middle East by the Jews. It's wild.
And that the majority of Palestinians had rights, if not equal, at least greater than the minority of the Jews, and that ultimately the best solution for this was one state in which both the Arabs and the Jews would live under one government.
See, that's also a pretty interesting suggestion to make. Obviously, he's arguing for the one-state solution. It's just so tough to think about it because I don't know. I feel like anyone who thinks they knew a solution is just kind of naive at this point. To think that a one-state solution would have worked any better than a two-state solution, I don't know. I guess we will never know. It's just, I'm battling in my own head right now about what he's saying.
But there was not to be such a state. In 1947,
Like, had there been a one-state solution, I still think political power would have been monopolized by the incoming Jewish people and still would have been used against the Palestinians, and maybe even done so in a legal framework, rather than the illegal framework that the Israelis have been employing so far.
placed the question of Palestine before the United Nations. On the 29th of November, a vote was taken to partition the area. There was to be one Jewish and one Arab state. For the Jews, most of them scarred for life from years of Nazi atrocities in Europe, this was cause for joyful celebration. But to the Arabs, Any partition which granted 56% of the land to 32% of the population was unacceptable.
It's just so sad that those are the numbers that they originally didn't like, and it's just like, it got so much worse because they argued, you know, like, had the Palestinians actually accepted this deal, there is a chance they might still have all the land that they were given during this deal, but because they didn't, they just opened themselves up to have it all taken away from them, you know? It's just, it's so unfortunate.
Fighting and skirmishes continued. On May 14, 1948, a Jewish state self-proclaimed itself under the name of Israel. Incidents, such as that of the Jewish massacre of Arabs in the village of Deir Yassin, which had taken place in April, had spurred an exodus of refugees. Neighboring Arab states sent troops.
Hang on, another map, let's look at it. Mediterranean Sea is in a different but still similar sort of font, but then everything else is just normal again. We have Saudi Arabia instead of the Nejd and everything else. Palestine, no Israel. That's probably the most interesting part of this map.
Into Palestine, claiming they were acting for the sole purpose of restoring peace and security and establishing law and order in Palestine.
Yeah, we learned about this in the last week's video.
It became full-scale war. Numerous UN efforts to negotiate a truce were fruitless. In September 1948, the United Nations chief mediator, Count Folke Bernadotte, was shot and killed in Jerusalem by a Jewish extremist group. Only in the spring of...
I feel like that must have been like big news headlines back in the day. Like, I've never heard of that assassination, but that seems like one of those things that, like, it's just another domino leading towards the ultimate prize.
1949 was an armistice reached. By that time, more Arab land had been taken. Israel had already begun to expand its borders.
Again, it must have been so frustrating to watch all this happen in real time and still be powerless to stop it, especially because the Israelis got all the military equipment from the Allied powers, you know, like you couldn't even just fight them off their land anymore, you know, it really is just hard to imagine settlers coming and moving you away.
The main effect on the population was to create a great deal of panic and fear. The population for the most...
Look at all these stills of the Palestinian refugee camps all the way back in, what, the 60s or maybe the 70s. But this is just, again, it's just so wild. It's so reminiscent of exactly what's happening nowadays, too.
Panic and fear. The population for the most part was unarmed. They were confronting a well-organized and well-armed invasion. As a result, when...
Yeah, again, I'm just trying to emphasize how when the Israelis started showing up here, that most of the people weren't like rich people or anything. They were just regular farming peasants, you know? Not to say that they were peasants, but like pretty much everyone around the world was peasants at this time. So it was really just a bunch of peasants up against a very technologically superior enemy, which is just, I don't know, it's so tough.
The events like the massacre of Deir Yassin in April of 1948 occurred.
What's this massacre? I've never heard of this. Deir Yassin, is that the name of the city? The massacre of Deir Yassin? Again, this is part of why watching this stuff is so important, because they remember the context of these sorts of things. Like this massacre I've never heard about before, but it's obviously a very important aspect of this region's history, so I hope we learn a little bit more about it.
Occurred. Panic spread through the population, a population which was in 1947.
Again, there's already kids carrying other kids. Like this footage could be straight out of Gaza today for all I know.
And then continuing into the spring of 1948 was not well organized and had no political center to it.
Yeah, again, like to most of these Palestinian people, like this just happened one day. Like these people didn't have access to like the global news networks. So to them, they were just working their fields one day and a bunch of Israelis showed up, you know? Like I can't imagine they had much of a warning for any of this.
As a result, the principle...
Like even World War II, like that happened like thousands of miles away from them. So I can't imagine they thought they would have been impacted by it at all.
Principle and the main impulse of people was to...
It's crazy to think though, if the Ottomans had gotten on the other side of the war, maybe this would have all been avoided.
Run.
All right, so this is Dr. Edward Said from Columbia University here in New York. That's pretty cool. Again, it's important to note that back then, Palestinians were not only like well off, but they were well educated too.
To get as far away from the fighting, from the terror as possible.
Not to say that there aren't well-educated Palestinians now, I just don't think they have access to this high of education anymore. I feel like maybe some of them do, but back then it was a lot more normal for just your standard Palestinian wealthy kids to get American degrees. It just shows how integrated Palestine once was with the rest of the world. But then, yeah, we're back to the refugee city.
By December 1948, half of the population of Palestine had fled.
Dang, by December of 1948, half of the population of Palestine had fled, which is pretty wild. I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but just think 1 year into Israel's history, they had already kicked out half of the people who lived here. It's so wild. Like, especially when you consider all the people who are still living in Palestine to this day. Like, that is still a very small proportion of the total number of people that once lived there.
The following year, the United Nations established UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees. The agency's mandate, to provide registered refugees, wherever they may live, with food rations and shelter.
See, everything just seems so much more orderly back then, too. Like, I feel like the refugee camps I see the Palestinians walking into these days does not look anything like this. There aren't teachers in those refugee camps. There aren't people making sure everyone gets fed, you know? Like, it seems like a world away, this reaction to the refugees, compared to what we're seeing now.
Health care and basic education, enlisting the collaboration of host nations. It was to be, and still is, financed from voluntary contributions. When work got underway, an estimate...
You know, I don't want to say it, this might sound really weird, but this is how you treat refugees, you know? Like, like they just seem like they are actually well taken care of at this time. I could just be falling for the propaganda here, but it seems like had this been the worst that the Palestinians encountered, they still might have had a chance in life. I know that they will experience much greater hardships later. It's just so interesting to see how well they were treated, even as refugees back then. And I don't want to say they were well treated as refugees, it's just compared to how I've seen refugees being treated in the modern age, these kids are definitely living a life of luxury here.
When work got underway, an estimated 500,000 people were getting UNRWA's help.
Dang, I wonder how old these kids now are. This was made in '79, so these kids were probably like 10, 12, and it's been like, what, 40 years? So these people are probably, what, like 55, 60 maybe? That's wild. They're all still alive, though. These are all still living people.
By 1978, the figure had increased to 1,760,000 Palestinians registered to receive care. In '48, the Assembly had resolved that the refugees wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date or be duly compensated.
See, again, another aspect that I just feel like we don't treat refugees the same way now. Like, they ruled that these people had the right to return to their homes. And if they weren't given that right, then they need to be compensated. And I know compensating somebody for stealing their land is still not that great of a trade, but even still, like, the fact that they were thinking about compensating these people, like, no one is getting compensated from Gaza today, you know? Like, it's a completely different way of treating people back then. And maybe that's because of the Holocaust still. Like, it seems like they were conscious of avoiding Holocaust-type situations. I wish we could say the same today.
This has been reaffirmed by the United Nations every year ever since. But these resolutions failed to be implemented because repatriation in accordance with these resolutions was not permitted by Israel.
Again, Israel just creating its own problems, really. Like, if they can't repatriate, what else are they supposed to do besides want to take it all back by force? You know what I'm saying?
Most of our population is a poor
Like, I'm not excusing violence by any means. It's just like, what other option are you giving these people?
population. And those who have to live in camps live in misery and squalor and poverty of a sort that really is intolerable.
Yeah, exactly what he just said. Like, you're forcing these people to live in conditions that are just intolerable, you know? Like, that's really what it is. Like, you are just dehumanizing them to the point where they cannot take it anymore. And then everyone acts surprised when the Palestinians lash out in brutal ways. It's like, yeah, when you deny people their humanity, they lose their humanity. That's kind of the point.
Nevertheless, since the late 60s, the lot of the camp dweller has been improved not only by the social, medical, and educational services provided in the camps, but also for the first time in their lives, they now have a sense that by struggling politically and militarily and even intellectually, they are beginning to move out of the camps. They are no longer simply forgotten people left to rot there.
You know, this is kind of a sad statement to be hearing now, because it sounds like at this moment, the person who's speaking does have a sort of hope that there will be some sort of like reconciliation. But the fact that I'm watching this from 50 years in the future and I know no reconciliation is coming anytime soon, it puts a little knife in your back hearing all these words.
Definitely.
Hang on, I want to look at these flags real quick. What are these flags flying? You guys know me, I love seeing the flags. Alright, so they have a Lebanon flag, and it looks like they have like a United Arab Republic flag. That would be impressive if they had that. I don't know where these docks are, but I'm getting carried away by the flags. You can tell it's a Lebanese flag though, because it has the red with the tree on it. So you can definitely tell those are Lebanese.
Beirut, Lebanon.
Oh, well, there you go, Beirut, Lebanon. I guess I didn't even need to do any of that.
In a still recent past, a prosperous metropolis.
In a still recent past, a prosperous metropolis. All right, so is he suggesting it's no longer prosperous?
Since the mid-70s, a city devastated by an intractable civil war.
Oh, okay, so it's no longer prosperous because Lebanon was in a civil war during this time. That's interesting. I don't think I quite knew that either.
For years, affluent people lived in comfort here. Not the Palestinians.
I just want to go back to this shot of the Beirut skyline. So where did that explosion happen? Because I feel like it happened like right here, you know? Like based on the footage that I saw from everywhere, I'm pretty sure we're looking at like the harbor that exploded right now.
Affluent people lived in comfort here. Not the Palestinians, though. There are an estimated 400,000 of them here in Lebanon.
An estimated 400,000 Palestinian refugees in Lebanon circa 1978. That's a lot of people.
They are to be found crowded in areas which do not live up even to our usual concept of a refugee camp. In urban ghettos, which seem to get worse and worse as the years go by.
You know, they say that, but then they fade into this person's house, and it actually looks like a really pleasant house. Not to dispel what he just said, I'm just saying that, like, these people still did have a quality of life living here.
This is where the Hubishi family lives. Refugees from 1948.
Refugees from 1948. So these people actually fled the first Israeli colonizers. That is just so wild that we have footage of these people, you know?
They had resettled on the West Bank. The 67 war.
But again, look at what these kids are wearing. They're all wearing like pants with jackets. It's such westernized fashion. It's insane. I really did not expect Palestinians to be dressing so Americanly.
Brought them first to Jordan. Then in 70, they were forced to move into South Lebanon.
Look at this guy. Are you telling me this guy does not look American? Like, there is no other group of people I would lump this guy in besides Americans based on how he looks. His mustache, his afro, his freaking popped collar, his freaking unbuttoned shirt. Like, this guy is American through and through. And that's what's so crazy is that the Palestinians really were, like, up for the globalized system, you know? Like, they weren't at all these backwards sort of, you know, Muslim people that we think of nowadays as terrorists. You know, like they were very open to the global market. They were open to wearing this sort of clothes and having these sorts of haircuts, you know? Like, I think people think of Palestine as a place that's closed off because it's literally enclosed by fences of barbed wire now. But back then, people had access to everything else that everyone else had access to. And that extends into fashion as well. It's just incredible to see a Palestinian person dressed like this. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one. I just think that it is so amazing to see him looking like that.
Now they are here in Beirut. Children.
Like, if every Palestinian looked like this today, I don't think there would be a conflict there, you know?
Were born along the way. The older boys.
Dude, look how American this guy looks. I just can't get over it.
Boys pride themselves on being fighters already.
The afro, did the Arab people actually maintain afros like this, or was this like an actual style? Because it feels like a style. I just don't think that regular Arab people maintained afros like this before. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I don't want to make statements on people's, you know, hair or whatnot. I'm just so surprised this is how they look at this time, you know? Like, look at this. This kid's wearing a collar. He's got buttons on his chest. Like, how freaking westernized, you know? He's wearing jeans. He's wearing blue jeans. Like, excuse me.
The girls still go to one of the schools for Palestinian children that UNRWA has maintained and run since 1950.
The Palestinian people, like any other people in the world, had the right of having its own independence.
Again, this is very interesting to see a classroom full of not only Palestinians, but Palestinian women. Again, I feel like a lot of people nowadays would just not expect for there to be female Palestinian students all the way back then. But what we're learning is that the Palestinians were actually very accepting of this sorts of stuff. It's only in more and desperate modern times that they've started to reject world secularism for a more, you know, fundamentalist Islamic look. But back then, we can clearly see Islam was not winning over the globalized American system. Like, girls are just going to school. I don't know.
Independent educational system.
Again, look at this guy. He's just his freaking mustache. Maybe this is more regular for an Arab man, but again, I just don't think mustaches were a thing before America. Like, I'm sorry, I know they were. I know I sound so dumb saying that, but I just don't think mustaches were this popular during this time. I don't know. Every time I see a mustache, I think of America. Like, if you ask me, most facial hair in the Arab world is like full beard, you know? Like, I just didn't think people had mustaches. Maybe I'm wrong about that, though. Adnan Abd el-Rahim. That's this guy. He's the UNRWA teacher.
That enables him to strengthen his national...
Again, they all speak English perfectly well, too. It's so confusing. Because you think that they would not be able to speak English because they would be denied that education or something. But what you don't realize is that these people were granted education for so long as well. It's just, I feel like most of the Palestinian society and culture has just been completely forgotten in the past decades. Like, this is how Palestine used to be once upon a time, not even that long ago.
Unity, and to express his national...
And then what becomes the greater shame? That Palestinians once did this, or they no longer do it because of Israel? You know, like, Israel has single-handedly turned the Palestinians away from the global West.
Palestinian character. Yes, we like to emphasize the role of the masses in the Palestinian struggles through the last 30 years. And we like to emphasize the nature of our enemy. And we like also to emphasize the difference between Judaism and Zionism as a political movement.
Again, that's a very interesting thing for the teacher to be saying in this classroom, is that they're emphasizing the difference between Judaism and Zionism, which is a very important distinction, but it's so interesting that they're being taught that in these schools. Like, you would think that, like, they just wouldn't be, you know? It's so much nuance that you trust these kids to learn and pick up on and not become like terrorists or whatever in their future because they have this understanding. It's just like, I don't know, that was a very interesting thing to learn that these kids were being taught.
We like to put in our pupils' mind the humanitarian nature of our struggle.
So this guy pretty much summed it up perfectly, that they're trying to put in the minds of their students their humanitarian struggle, you know? Like, it's such a shame to hear them all say it so intelligently for it to all go nowhere, you know?
And the humanitarian nature of our social and political aspirations.
In the early 50s, the first resistance group appeared, El-Fatah. In 1964,
El-Fatah, I've heard about that too.
the Palestine Liberation Organization was formed. 10 years later, at a summit meeting of Arab
Palestine Liberation Organization. Isn't that still the political party that's in charge of the West Bank? I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure they're still in power to this day.
heads of state, the Rabat Conference of 19...
Again, look at this kid and what he's wearing. He's wearing a freaking t-shirt and what looks like jeans. It's just like, it's so shocking to see that. Like, you expect these people to be in like their robes and whatnot, but they're really not. They were really just wearing the same clothing kids in America were wearing at the same time.
1974, the PLO was recognized as sole representative of the Palestinian people. That same year, the General Assembly of the United Nations accorded it similar recognition.
The PLO.
Oh, this guy too. What's his name? Arafat? Yeah, I think that's his name, Arafat. We saw him in the last documentary as well.
Is the sole representative of the Palestinian people.
So this is like pretty much the most famous Palestinian, I guess, in recent history.
We have this...
Again, he's well learned in English too. Like, he's not struggling. I mean, he's trying to think of his words, but he's not actually struggling to speak, which again just illustrates how educated these people actually were.
Organization which has different establishments in many fields, controlling all our different branches.
Thanks. See, look at this. This is inside the office of the PLO, right? Like the most Palestinian people you can ever get. And look at what they're wearing. They're still just wearing the most normal Western clothing imaginable. You know, like that's, I just feel like that alone is just like shocking to me. It's like we had already won the cultural victory. We just like... I think the part that amazes me the most about their clothing is that it shows that these people were willing to adapt to the modern world. Like they were willing to accept foreign fashion, you know? It's just, I feel like that thought has been lost now. Like I feel like we've forgotten that once upon a time the Palestinians did welcome the rest of the world in with open arms. It's just, I don't know. This is, again, that's part of the value of watching this sort of stuff, is even their clothing is a preservation of how they thought about their world at their time.
Executive committee, our military forces, our central council, we have our national conference.
Like the fact that they're all wearing suits, you know, today they would be wearing, I don't want to try to say what they would be, but they would be wearing like some sort of traditional robe. They would not be wearing Westerner European style suits, you know, but the fact that they were during this time tells you something about what they thought.
Which represent all our...
They didn't see themselves as being separate or different from Europeans. In fact, they saw the opposite. They saw themselves as being very educated, very modern. It's just a shame that we've kind of forgotten that.
Organizations, political organizations, syndicates, unions, which represent our people inside.
Look at these posters behind them, though. This is pretty crazy propaganda that we're seeing. All these rifles and everything. Again, you can't escape propaganda. What we're watching right now is propaganda. So seeing their propaganda through our propaganda is kind of funny.
Inside our occupied territories and outside our occupied...
Again, this was made by the UN, so I don't know if this really counts as propaganda, but I think this is trying to sway your political beliefs one way or another. So I think it's fair to call this propaganda.
Occupied territories.
Be they invaders, tourists, or refugees, large bodies of foreigners are always resented by the local population, and the Palestinians have proved to be no exception. Many refugee camps have become grudgingly accepted enclaves.
See, look at this kid. Look at this kid in the street right now. Look at his blue jeans and how he cuffed them. Like, again, just such a freaking American view that I'm getting right now. I don't know. I'm so amazed by it.
Guarded by PLO soldiers.
Yeah, all these kids too, they're all just wearing jeans, you know? Like the second somebody's wearing jeans, that, I don't know, that does something for me.
Now the question is that the Palestinian, wherever he is at the mercy of others. He is always sold.
Look at all the clothes these kids are wearing. I know I've already hit this point home a bunch already, but it's just like the more you see them wearing just the regular ass clothes, the more you realize, oh, like they're not so different from you and I.
He is always observed. He is always caught. He is always mistreated. And this is the tragedy of the Palestinian today. He doesn't have a place to go to.
Yeah, that pretty much is the same problem that exists now, is they just don't have a home of their own, so they can't actually ever feel safe, you know? And if nobody ever feels safe, they'll do anything it takes to feel safe. I don't know. I feel like I'm understanding the Palestinian cause through watching this. I'm not saying I'm agreeing with Hamas or anything. All I'm saying is that I understand the need of the Palestinian people to continue fighting, I guess.
لا ننسى إنه أن الحرب هي جزء من السياسة.
We should not forget that war is part of politics, and we struggle by all means at our disposal.
ونحن نناضل بجميع.
War is a part of politics, and we struggle by all means of our disposal. So that's an interesting statement. War is a part of politics, and we struggle by any means, I don't know. That's a lot to unpack right there.
جميع الوسائل.
We struggle on all different fronts, politically, militarily, diplomatically, and socially.
عسكريا ونحن نناضل سياسيا ونحن نناضل دبلوماسيا ونحن نناضل اجتماعيا ونحن نناضل إعلاميا.
Training of the Fedayins, the fighters,
The Fedayins, is that really what they're called? Again, that's reminding me of Dune.
begins at 18. But few of those who come here do not already have previous experience.
Again, look at these guys, though. Don't these guys even look American as hell? Like, I feel like you don't even see, like, shirtless Arabs anymore. Like, the fact that all these guys are shirtless together just feels like you wouldn't see this in the modern Arabia. And look, this guy over here, he looks blonde. Like, he looks like a total, absolute, like, white guy.
But few of those who come here do not already have previous experience.
Whoa, and this guy, whoa, that guy looks American. Like, the fact that they had people this fat in Palestine, I don't know if that's really mean to say, but that is, like, the most American thing I think I've seen.
In weapons and weaponry. The first operations of Fatah date back to 1965. To some, they are terrorists. To others, they are freedom fighters and heroes.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy that, like, on the one hand, we're just watching some freedom fighters, but on the other hand, we're watching terrorist training videos, you know? Like, I guess it really depends on where you stand.
Willing to put their lives on the line for the liberation of their homeland.
I'm curious if the dancing in a circle is an actual military thing, or if this is just like a cultural thing, you know? Like, do they actually have to march in a circle for their military service? I don't know. But I am starting to remember the training that we saw in the last video for these guys, how they were crawling under the barbed wire, being shot at by live rounds. Like, this is a very different vibe. Like, here they're just dancing and listening to music. Again, this guy's in blue jeans. Like, I don't know. I think that alone is just blowing my mind.
The songs and dances of the Fatah soldiers are also the songs and dances of the children in refugee camps.
That's a pretty funny observation. I wonder which way it went. Did the kids sing the songs and then the people in the army adopted them? Or was the army singing them and then the kids heard them and started singing them as well? I'm curious which came first, the children's playground song or the army song? If they're singing the same songs, I just want to know, did it originate as a children's thing on a playground, or did it originate in the army and then spread to the children? It's just funny to think that a bunch of army men are singing, like, children's nursery rhymes, you know?
Here, they are taught the additional subjects that they say UNRWA's regular schools do not offer or gloss over too quickly. They want to learn more about Palestine, its folklore and its traditions, and about the importance of having a homeland of one's own.
See, that's interesting that they are trying to teach them even more about Palestine than those UN schools are teaching them. Because I guess that's fair. You can teach them the history, but you can't teach them their own culture in the same way. So I get the people wanting to teach their kids their own history as well.
Here, they acquire the discipline and toughening.
Again, these just look like everyday American kids, though. Like, not like, again, just not like terrorists, you know? Like, that's really what I'm trying to, like, escape the thought of, is that these people are terrorists. Like, these are just actual children wearing, like, little children's clothes being trained for this sort of thing. Like, these aren't evil people. It's just evil situation that they're in.
Which, they hope, will enable them to qualify as fighters someday.
مجموع
Again, they're training this girl to be a fighter. I don't know enough about this time to be surprised by that or not, but it feels like today they would just not be training the women to be fighters in like the terrorist or the freedom fighters cell. It's so shocking to see the equal sort of treatment the women are getting.
Decades of exile and life in camps make it difficult for Palestinians to become self-sustaining.
Dang, I was about to make a comment on this guy's clothes again, but then I noticed he's in this glass blowing workshop, which is just so crazy. This is the clothes that he wears to go to his job blowing glass. It's so funny. Like no apron, no like work clothes or anything, just his regular button down like Ralph Lauren polo.
From the beginning, many started small businesses. Lots of them still peddle cigarettes or run delivery services in and around the camps. But a lucky few have turned small enterprises into cottage industries, which, as they slowly integrate into the local economy, offer employment in turn to other camp dwellers.
This is really cool, though, how these refugees were already like figuring out their own businesses and enterprises. That is like, again, it's pretty impressive. Again, you must already have that base of knowledge before being forced into a refugee camp, right? So it's so interesting to see that they're starting their own businesses based on what they already knew beforehand.
But for the individual, here more than anywhere else, education is the key.
Oh wow, they're even doing stuff with like TVs and computers. That's like really impressive. That's like very high-end education level work right there.
Bassam, eldest son of Hubishis, goes to the university and also keeps a
That's funny, it looks like he got shocked.
part-time job to contribute to the family's income. Scholarships help many Palestinians to go abroad for graduate study programs.
See, again, even Palestinians going abroad for study programs, like, I just feel like no one in my college came from Palestine to study. Again, I could be wrong about that. It just feels like they had a world of different opportunities back then, even.
You know, for a Palestinian, it's all over the world the same thing, whether it is in Kuwait, Lebanon, or anywhere else. You are refused to be in the community. Of course, they do accept you as long as you live there with them. But still, you do not belong. You do not have their citizenship. You do not have the same rights. And automatically, the same feeling would be, whether you are in Lebanon or in Kuwait or in Saudi Arabia or anywhere else.
So it's kind of ironic that he just described the experience of being like a Christian in one of these Arab countries and how you're kind of denied all your rights as well. I feel like that's an argument that Israelis made for why they were able to deny Palestinians' rights, is because in all of these surrounding countries, they also deny like half of their population rights based on their religion as well. I don't know if that's a good argument, but I guess I see why people would make that argument.
Edward Said, again.
Palestinians have the highest rate of university graduates of any Arab nation.
Well, all right, so that's a pretty important stat right there. The Palestinians have the highest rate of graduates of any Arab nation. So think about that for a second. Of all the Arab nations, more students are coming out of Palestine proportionally than anywhere else. It's just like, it shows you how much access to education they had, which should help illustrate just how civil their society was. Like, you don't get access to Western universities for most of your population if you are just a bunch of terrorists. You know what I'm saying? Like, back then, they were really just peaceful people who wanted education. It's such a shame that that's no longer the case.
As engineers, as social scientists, as economists, the Palestinians are, in fact, now the intellectual and even the moral elite of the Arab world.
See, isn't that so wild? At this time, he just said the Palestinians were the intellectual and the moral elite in this region. It's just like, it's so bizarre because that's like the complete opposite of how things are now in this region. But it should be eye-opening as to how much change has taken place in Palestine as a result of Israel. I feel like it's important for us all to remember this form of Palestine. That's probably the most important part of this program, is just seeing what Palestine used to be before it was truly destroyed by Israel.
Unfortunately, there are still too many unskilled, and for them there is, at best, seasonal and temporary work, picking fruit for a local landowner, Lebanese or Jordanian, at harvest time, street cleaning, or other menial jobs in the camps. And for the women, domestics in the home of...
See, here's another interesting thing, because it makes total sense what they're doing, right? If you have all these untrained laborers and you have all these unpicked oranges, you might as well have the untrained laborers pick the oranges. But what's interesting is nowadays, I don't think they do this. I think they ship people in from like Thailand and other places in Asia to pick their crops now. And I think they do this, again, very purposefully to deny that economic stimulus to the Palestinians.
The more fortunate.
It's interesting to see that once upon a time they were doing it the proper way, I guess. Where I don't know if it's the proper way to let these people pick the fruit off their own ancestral lands. I don't know if that's not proper or improper, but it's a lot better than shipping in other people to do it for them as well.
Although there is a Palestinian workers' union to protect them from being exploited, the life of these people remains meager and insecure.
You know, I do like the honesty that they're delivering all this stuff with. Like, that is, like, you have to appreciate they are not sugarcoating anything here.
To remedy this situation and better channel the energy and productiveness of the Palestinian people, a series of workers' cooperatives got launched in 1970 by Fatah.
See, again, I'm not sure if this is necessarily a good thing. Like, in a lot of ways, this is just taking advantage of an oppressed group in order to profit more. But at the same time, you do need a way to give these people money and things to do. So I do get it. It just seems like when you force people to do labor like this, it's not as good as it actually seems.
It is called Samed.
Samed, that's funny. Samed.
In Arabic, Samed translates as steadfastness, the idea of never giving up.
Wow, look at this mural. This is actually wow, look at this mural. This is actually an amazing piece of art right here.
The Palestinians see the Sameds as the productive part of a people in exile. The basic idea is to provide some sort of vocational training to a generation which has known nothing more than camp life.
Like, I get that. I get that these people have been denied the access to work for so long that they just need something in order to sustain them. But again, it's like a self-created problem. It's like, well, if you just didn't deny them the opportunities in the first place, then they wouldn't need to work in a sweatshop like this, you know?
And to equip as many as possible of them to become financially independent, both now in their diaspora.
But again, they're also showing women how to work, which I just was not expecting.
In their diaspora, and also tomorrow, when they will have returned to Palestine.
Which again just goes to illustrate how like cosmopolitan or like forward-thinking the Palestinians used to be.
There are several fields of activity: industrial development, craft and cottage enterprise.
I mean, I guess they still are knitting stuff, but like, hey, beggars can't be choosers.
And even an agricultural sector, under which a few Palestinians provide technical assistance in several African countries. So far, 3,000 people are employed full-time in the Samed workshop, and that number is increasing steadily. Whether they sew cloth, make embroidery for sale abroad, or assemble furniture to fill the needs of camp dwellers or the requirements of Palestinian offices, they are, each one of them, contributing to return to self-sufficiency of people who refuse to remain any longer the ward of the world.
See, again, what this is illustrating is that if you give people the opportunity to improve their lives, they will take it and they will work as hard as they possibly can. You know, like the reason that there's so many problems in Palestine today is that they've been denied access to this sort of economic stimulus. They just don't have a way of earning money like this anymore. So again, there's such a clear contrast between how the Israelis are treating the Palestinians today versus how they were once treated in the past. And it's so mind-blowing to see how well they were treated. You forget that like there was humanity once. I wonder what these posters behind this guy say though. I bet they say something pretty raunchy.
The PLO provides other services as well: schools and hospitals, research centers, and so forth.
You see, this hospital is one of the hospitals of the Palestine Red Crescent Society, which is one of the institutions of the PLO. Of course.
Yo, that's so funny. Hang on, I just want to go back for a second. So this is Yosef Iraqi, medical doctor, but he's from the Palestinian Red Crescent. So instead of the Red Cross, because they are so Muslim-minded that they can't accept a Red Cross, they had to change it to the Red Crescent. That's so funny.
Of course, our services we give to all people who need this help. Our plans are divided into two plans for disaster time and for peace time. This hospital here is a specialized hospital for the cardiovascular surgery and for the pediatric surgery and for the neurosurgery. And daily we have in this hospital at least 2 major operations.
Again, this hospital looks like a very standard hospital for the time that this was made. So I'm again just impressed with like the access to like modern technology that these people were afforded.
كيف الخروج هذا؟
خروج كثير أخضر إسهال كثير ماي
مثل ماي لون كيف هذا؟
We have big problems not only of the wounded but also we take the responsibility of the refugees. The people were under great stress, especially the small kids, the children. Those people are homeless now and we face many problems, especially in the psychological situation of the small kids and of the grown-up people. They lost.
So look at what this guy is selling. He's selling Marlboro cigarette packs stacked up into a little tower like this. That's so funny.
They have done.
Where is this guy getting Marlboro cigarettes?
All what they have done since they were deported from Palestine in 1948. All what they have built. Members of their families. They have lost everything here. So you have to support them, you have to stay beside them.
For many, the first move had been there. They lived in camps, but at least...
All right, so there was some sort of editing issue a second ago, and we kind of lost, it seemed like some information. I don't know how much. It didn't seem like much, but we're kind of just starting off in like the middle of a sentence now. So we kind of just have to figure out what's going on by context.
They were still in their own country. In '67, when Israel occupied the rest of Palestine, the West Bank camps emptied themselves in a new mass exodus, this time across the blown-up Allenby Bridge into Jordan. Thanks to the Israeli-Jordanian open bridge policy, this gateway between two worlds at war remains open to this day, a link for Palestinians in exile and those who stayed behind.
I wonder if that's still standing to this day, this bridge. It kind of looks like it wasn't even standing back then, but I'm curious if this bridge across this river still stands.
It became apparent to Palestinians that if they were going to rely exclusively upon the Arab states to wage their struggle for them, they would get nowhere. And therefore, Palestinians had to take their own progress towards self-determination in their own hands. At the moment of the deepest collective Arab failure, the Palestinians began then to assert themselves and to take up arms to struggle towards self-determination.
See, so that's a very important point too, is only after realizing that they weren't going to get what they wanted by relying on the other Arab people of the region, only then did they take the matters into their own hands. And I think we're going to see a bit of a change in gears in how the way the Palestinians handle themselves after this. Again, so this bridge is totally destroyed. I wonder if it's been rebuilt or anything.
وفي عام 1967 تم احتلال.
In '67, when the rest of Palestine was occupied, I was a soldier in the Jordanian army.
الملك حسين بل صدرت الأوامر إلنا بالانسحاب بدون أي قتال. فتم تسليم.
The king ordered us to withdraw without fighting, and so the whole of Palestine fell to Zionist control.
The king ordered them to withdraw without fighting. First off, I'm curious what king they're talking about. I have not heard about a king so far, but I'm also curious, like, is that actually true? Was there a moment in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict where they could have stood and fought their ground and maybe have affected something, but their king said not to? That was a very pivotal moment in history, if it was.
There had been resistance before, But 67 was when the Palestinian Revolution really started.
What's this flag flying behind him? Do you guys see that? I'm getting distracted too. It looks like red and white though.
Since 67,
Oh, it's red, white, black, and green. Okay.
we've had our own weapons, our own
I
soldiers.
can't tell what country this flag is from though. It might be Jordan. Oh, it probably is. It probably is.
We've become public. 3 years later,
Oh man, I know about the planes. Holy moly, here it comes.
within 48 hours, 3 airliners were hijacked and forced to land in the Jordanian desert.
This is probably why I knew they were going to blow up in the last video too.
After days of negotiation, the hostages were freed and the planes destroyed.
Oh, well that's cool. I didn't actually know that the hostages were freed, but they still blew up the planes. That's pretty funny. It's funny how this was never even about the hostages. It was all about the planes. Dang, I wonder what it was like during this time though to read about this news story in like the newspaper. You know, like I bet this story was like front page news material. So I can only imagine what it must have been like to be learning about this event.
Palestinians had made the complacent world aware of their plight through dramatic news headlines.
Yeah, was this like the first Palestinian like terrorist act? I'm trying to think if there was another. I think there was another in the previous one that I mentioned. So this probably wasn't the first terrorist attack, but it probably was the most publicized one.
That same...
Again, to be honest, blowing up 3 planes in the middle of a tarmac is like not the worst terrorist attack ever, if you ask me. Like, we've suffered way worse since then, is what I'm saying. Both the Palestinians and the Israelis have suffered worse than that.
Same year, in Jordan, violent clashes occurred between Palestinian and Jordanian troops.
See, that's what blows my mind too. They're not even fighting the Israelis right now. They're fighting the Jordanians, like the people who took them in as refugees. It's such a complex situation. I feel like I truly can never fully understand it. Again, this is pretty wild footage of just tanks rolling through like densely populated urban areas. So hang on, who controls these armored vehicles? Not the Palestinians, right? This has to be like the Jordanian army fighting against the Palestinians, I have to imagine.
Many died on both sides, and many Palestinian fighters left for another exile, to Lebanon this time, and many other places.
I just don't get it. I don't get why they were fighting Jordan. I feel like they didn't even do a good job explaining it here. But can somebody in the comments explain to me why the Palestinians were fighting the Jordanians? I don't get it.
But the spirit of resistance and determination to restore their rights was not dead. What had been common scenes in the streets of Amman just moved to Beirut as Palestinians continued to rally to their cause. During the 60s, Gaza was the stage for protest and sabotage. But after 1970, little remained of the unrest there.
See, that's a pretty ironic statement. I don't want to dive too deep into it. Those wounds are still open, but it's just interesting that Gaza played a different role in the past. I guess a similar but different role.
However, the October War had instilled a new sense of pride to the Arabs. On the occupied West Bank, this was expressed through more and more demonstrations against both the military authorities and the appearance of new Jewish settlers on Arab land. The result was tightened security, numerous arrests, and for some...
Again, it's kind of, I don't want to say wholesome, but it's kind of weird to see this level of like resilience from the Palestinians without such an overreaction from the Israeli side. I'm sure the overreaction is coming later, but right here, it just seems like a bunch of kids throwing rocks at soldiers. Like, had things only stayed that bad, I don't think there would be such a huge issue here nowadays, but it's because things escalated well beyond this. It's so funny to see the early stages of these conflicts.
Numerous arrests, and for some, deportation. From 1967 till now...
Deportation? Where would they even be deported to, though? Like, I guess Lebanon or something, but it's like, how do you deport someone from their own place? I don't know. Is that really deporting, or is that just kidnapping someone?
The rebuilt Allenby Bridge has become the road to exile for most of the 1,300 people expelled by the Israelis from Gaza and the West Bank.
Yeah, taking from the military governor office in Jericho at 12 o'clock noon to the...
This is Nadim Zaru, deported mayor of Ramallah. Deported mayor, so they'd actually deported the mayor himself. Are you still the mayor, or do you give up your title once you're deported? I don't know. Like, is he still in charge of this city somewhere? You know, is he still taking calls, like figuring out the infrastructure or whatever, or is he just like out of there for good?
Governor office in Jericho at 12 o'clock noon to the bridge, where they reached the half of the bridge, and they told me that from here you can go, but you can't come back. I said, someday I will come back to my country because it's my country. We never thought that they will treat us after the occupation by the way they treated the people after the occupation. Demolishing houses, demolishing villages, treating people the way they are treating them. That will create more hatred from the Arabs toward the Jews.
See, exactly. What he just said was so spot on. Like it's your treatment of them that is making them hate you. They don't initially hate you, but then you destroy all their houses and they have no other choice. It's just like, it's so obvious, and it's been so obvious to so many people for so long how you actually like stop the spiral of conflict, and it's just by not being so evil to one another, you know? It's such a shame to hear that and just know that people understood and were still unable to avoid it.
That's why they are still in the camp, and they're working in the camp, they're raising their kids in the camp, because they know that someday we are going back. For instance, I can't go back. I want to go back, not as a visit. I want to go back and live in my hometown. My farm.
See, this is also another crazy aspect of this all, is people refused to leave the refugee camps because that means they were giving up their claim to their land forever. So some people purposefully remained refugees for their entire lives because they had hope that one day they would get to return. It's just, oh my God, there's so many issues with all of this. It's so tragic, everything. Oh my God.
Pharmacy is closed. I can't open my pharmacy. My wife will go there only for 1 week, 2 weeks every summer to renew the permits and come. All my family, or my tribe, if we say a white family, they are living there. I have my land, my house, my internet.
See, that's so crazy too. Like, he owns a business, he owns a pharmacy, and he still can't even go and maintain it. It's just, it's so wild.
It's there, right? I'm living here.
Again, a very legitimate criticism too, you know? Like, this guy's not saying, oh, I hate the Jewish people, I don't like Zionism. He's just saying, I want to run my pharmacy, you know? Like, that's the shame of it all. Like, there was such a strong desire to just get along with everyone else, but because of what the Israelis continued to do to them, that was just never going to be a final option for them.
Not a bad time, but still I want to go back to my hometown.
Amman is a temporary haven.
Yeah, I can't blame this guy, but at the same time, I feel like it's a lost cause, you know? Like, I feel like I would just have to move on. I know it's impossible to move on from something like that, but it's even more painful to hear the hope in his voice that it might actually reverse. It's such a shame.
Haven for many Palestinian deportees, their only alternative to Israeli prison.
They used to hang me from my feet with my upside down, with my head down, and they began to beat me on my feet and on my sexual organs for hours.
Israel concedes that some excesses were committed over the years by its occupation.
Israel concedes that some excesses were committed? Yeah, that's another way of saying we definitely tortured way too many people.
Occupying forces. It says that disciplinary measures were taken where cases have been documented.
I can almost guarantee you no disciplinary measures were ever taken.
And denies that torture was ever a state policy. But the UN's...
I don't want to disagree with the propaganda too much on this one, but I can guarantee you nobody ever said to anyone else in the IDF, hey, don't torture these guys, that's not cool.
Special committee to investigate Israeli practices in the occupied territories, basing itself on witnesses and press reports within and outside Israel, stated, the indications are very strong that cases of torture occurred and continue to occur.
My wife and my children are ready now
to fight and to be killed.
Yeah, I mean, that really depends on your definition of torture, because you could make the argument that every single act Israel is pursuing against the Palestinians is just a different form of torture, one way or the other. Saeed el-Bakawi. Saeed el-Bakawi, a Palestinian businessman. Again, you still just don't really see that title very much nowadays. Palestinian businessmen. That's what's hard to convey. There used to just be regular businessmen in this place, and now not so much.
Sake of Palestine, in any time. And I have my son.
Again, a nice collared shirt, button up. It's so westernized too.
Since 2 months.
They're playing freaking tennis down here, what am this pretty much looks like America. This guy could be in Southern California for all I know.
He's lost.
There's cars driving by. It looks like no different than any other modern country during the 70s. And I think that's the point. That's the value of the preservation of this film, is that you get to see what Palestine looked like before it was turned into rubble.
He's lost. This is his picture. And
You get to see what Palestine looked like, and you also get to understand what the people were like. That's honestly more important, is just seeing how nice and peaceful all of these people seem.
Feel any sad about him.
It's just these weren't crazy, raging terrorists. These are just regular people, businessmen who were just mistreated and oppressed.
This is my son. Since 2 months in Lebanon. He is lost.
Many others have gone.
See, and I bet every single Palestinian person had a story like that, where they lost a son or a brother or some sort of family member. It's when you realize every single person in this place experienced tragedy at the hands of the Israelis. It's just, again, it lets you understand their mentality, and the mentality that still exists in Palestine to this day a little better when you see how badly people were abused back then.
And many others will never return. For these men who have never known a land they can call their own, the rebirth of Palestine is the cause. Unfortunately,
these are some pretty wild children's drawings. But again, even these help illustrate the state of mind of the children, as they are just being constantly attacked by children, and the only way they can escape it is by imagining a world where the shoe is on the other foot. It's you could accuse whatever child of drawing this of being really messed up in the head, and I guess you would be right. They would definitely be a traumatized child, and that's exactly what this is illustrating, is just how the children of Palestine were traumatized by the Israeli army. So I don't know, it's not that it excuses a child drawing a bunch of hanging dead people, but at least we can understand why they were thinking that in the first place even. This is a pretty damning drawing for a child, though.
Killings and hangings, bullets and tanks.
But again, it's so honest what they think by looking at what they're drawing. It's the perfect manifestation of these children's emotions. And seeing what emotions they've been caused to feel should help you understand why they grew up into terrorists.
Leave indelible marks in the minds of the young. Proofs are easy to find in the Middle East these days. Wherever their parents were killed, during one of the many wars and conflicts the Palestinians have known these last 30 years, these orphans are the wards of Fatah.
See, again, you can't even really blame these kids if they're all orphans because all their parents were killed. You can just see how the cycle is starting all over again, kill their parents, orphan them, have them be raised by El Fatah to become soldiers to be killed so that their children will become orphans as well. It's like the cycle of poverty, but even worse. It's like the cycle of terror. It's instill in these children from a very early age that their parents were murdered, and then they will only ever know that as their reality for the rest of their lives.
The memory of the parents lives on in the recollection of their sons and daughters.
I really want to see what these kids are actually drawing. I know we just saw a few photos, but I wanted to see if that was like every kid or if that was just like a particularly disturbed child who drew those sorts of things.
I'll be a girl, but if my country is liberated, I'll be a doctor, an engineer, anything that my country needs me.
Yes. See, again, if his country is liberated, he'll be a doctor, he'll be an engineer. Like, they have no inherent desire for violence, which I know sounds obvious to say, but some people get genuinely convinced that these people are dead set on destroying Israel. That's not what they want. They just want to live in peace, you know? Like, I don't know. I'm getting frustrated now.
Edward Said remarks,
one of the saddest things to see is young children for whom no alternative exists except the gun. But I have a feeling that's changing. Over the years now, there are more Palestinian schools in which greater emphasis is...
Again, that's just so prescient that they're able to realize that without schools, you really give these kids no other options but violence. There's no way for them to earn money. There's no way to advance their cause. There's no way for them to live their lives except through violence when that's all you offer them. So what we really should be doing in Gaza right now is reconstructing schools, hospitals, and everything so that they do have an option besides becoming terrorists. But obviously that's not the road we're going to take.
Placed on academic subjects, on widening the educational experience of each child so that the day...
Dude, is this Freddie Mercury who's teaching them? Can I get a closer look at this guy? Does this not look like Freddie Mercury as
is not defined by exercises with
maybe not right now, all right. Maybe the angle a second ago, but...
the gun. There is a Palestinian dialect which is different in Arabic from, let's say, Syrian or Lebanese or Egyptian. There are traditions. There are...
See, I feel like that's also an interesting aspect of being a Palestinian, is before the Israelis arrived, Palestine was also still a very significantly different place than Egypt or Lebanon. You know, like, it's not just some random space that they started colonizing. It was an actual place with its own dialect of Arabic, which tells you something about their unique culture and history.
Our costumes, the family and clan organizations are different. Cuisine, turns of phrase, popular stories, mythology, and so on and so forth. So that you had in Palestine essentially a community, but nevertheless a cohesive national community which associated itself with the land.
Yeah, a cohesive community that associates itself with the land. I'm pretty sure that's just called a nation. But again, look at these kids marching. Like, these are some of the most American-looking kids. Even the girls are wearing, like, t-shirts and stuff. Like, I'm just very impressed with the fashion on display here. Though, again, it is pretty telling that even though they're wearing this sorts of clothes, what they're doing is they're learning to march in formation like as an army. Again, look at this blonde kid bringing up the back of this line. Like, these, it's not even like these are different ethnic groups from like the rest of Europeans. These are very similar people genetically to like everyone else in Europe. I feel like that's something else that people use to dehumanize the Palestinians, that they're part of some other ethnic group that's not like us. But clearly from their children, you can see that they look exactly like that's what I looked like as a kid, you know? Like, I had that same color hair and everything. It's just like they're very clearly just the same sorts of people as everyone else. But again, that's part of the value of preserving this sort of stuff, is you get to see that the people didn't actually look any different from you and I all the way back then.
I believe the present generation among the Palestinians cannot be called as moderate as the older generation.
The present generation cannot be called as moderate as the old generations. You know, you gotta wonder why. You gotta wonder what happened to these people in that time that would have made them less moderate towards the Israelis. You can only wonder these sorts of things. You can't actually answer what happened to them.
Relations among the Palestinians. That's why I think now it's the golden opportunity to have a peaceful settlement.
See, that is a very good idea, though, that he recognized that things were only going to get worse. Like, he recognized that the old Palestinians were willing to compromise, or willing to at least come to the table, whereas now the Palestinians today have just known oppression for so long that they're not willing to accept anything besides their own guaranteed freedom. Again, just very prescient, very intelligent observation made by this guy, that was like the last window of opportunity for a reconciliation.
With the Israelis, between the Palestinians and the Israelis, provided that the Israelis would recognize the rights of self-determination of the Palestinians. And
see, provided the Israelis would recognize the rights of self-determination for the Palestinians, that is the problem, is that the Israelis have never once recognized the rights of the Palestinian people, which I guess is why this program is called The Palestinian People Do Have Rights. It's just so clear to see when you hear about it through things like this.
Including the establishment of their own independent state on what remained from the Palestinian soil that was occupied in 1967.
محمد عبد الرحمن أبو حلتم مجدية محمد علي إسماعيل هاي إبراهيم.
Going home for a short visit is the hope of most Palestinians in diaspora. During the months when the Israeli military authorities implement this right of family reunions, thousands try to take advantage of it.
See, I feel like even this isn't really allowed in Palestine nowadays. I could be wrong, but it just doesn't feel like they're letting in Palestinians see their family and visit their old homes like they used to. This just, again, feels like another, little luxury. I don't want to say luxury, because allowing displaced people to briefly return to their home isn't exactly a luxury, but it's just like this quality of life, like this treatment of people as actual other human beings that I think has just completely faded from this region.
To get the permit is long and difficult. The screenings by both sides meticulous. But it is easier for Palestinians wishing to leave the occupied areas, especially when they are not requesting a right of return.
Yeah, it's pretty crystal clear what they were trying to do. They were saying you can leave, but it's going to be a lot more paperwork for us to say that you can come back. And guess what? You're never going to come back, you know? It's just like they were obviously trying to get people to leave. They were obviously trying to trick people into leaving.
Once by the bridge, there are further checks. Long hours of waiting before being called to board one of the buses. Because the Israelis process only 24 buses each day, some have to return time after time.
Again, they only process 24 buses a day? See, they're just artificially keeping it low to keep the amount of interaction low as well. It's like they could have had as many buses as they needed, but they didn't actually want the Palestinian people returning to their land. So they had no reason to actually increase the number of buses to accommodate the demand at hand. In fact, they had reason to do the exact opposite.
Hoping that tomorrow they will get their chance. On the other side of the river, there will be more security, body searches, customs duties, which sometimes make it necessary to abandon gifts or purchases behind. Some do not go back by way of the bridge. They are guerrillas who find their own way across borders. Their mission—
Is that really possible? People were actually crossing the border just through their own means as well? Like, I imagined they had it pretty well guarded, but I guess, you know, if it was possible to move between them still, that illustrates that Israel wasn't all powerful in this region either.
Illustrate the conflict between what is justifiable to them and what is inexcusable to others.
What's justifiable to them is inexcusable to others. And again, like, that is the same argument people make against the actions of the Palestinians in modern times, which I agree, all unacceptable actions, but to them, they saw that as just necessary for their fight. Again, I'm not trying to excuse terrorists by any means. I'm just trying to say that, like, they have a different perspective on it.
This took place in Malat, Israel.
Jesus, that was a pretty rough shot, though. I don't know if I'm allowed to show that on YouTube.
In 1974, following a raid at the school there by the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. 21 Israeli children and 4 adults were killed that day.
See, so that's pretty wild. I didn't know about this either, but this seems like another one of those terrorist events of Palestinians that just like convinced the whole world to hate them. It's such a shame because, like, obviously I understand why killing a bunch of school kids is like a really bad thing. And anyone who heard about it would instantly dislike the Palestinians. It's just like, why didn't they realize that? Or why didn't they realize that they were their own bad PR? I mean, I guess their hand was forced by Israel to begin with, so they never really had a choice in the matter anyway. It's just such a shame that people have been misinformed about Palestine for so long. Again, I'm not excusing this act by any means.
There are differences of opinions among Palestinians regarding the extent to which violence is justifiable.
There are differences of opinions among the Palestinians as to the amount of violence. Oh my God, I can't say it all in one go. But you guys heard what he said. Like, even amongst the Palestinians, not all agreed on what they should be doing. Obviously, some thought that going into a school and killing a bunch of kids was a horrible idea that would not help them or their cause. You know, like, some people were able to recognize that. But some people have also just been filled with so much hatred from the very beginning of their life, living in oppression for so long that they just can't see that. And that's how you get events like this. It's not from people just being evil on their own, but from people experiencing evil for their entire lives and then creating more of it.
The killing of innocent civilians, such as Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympics or travelers at Lod Airport.
Again, the Munich Olympics was just another very visible event that caused a lot of people to make up their minds on the Israel-Palestine conflict, with only having heard one side of it. That's the real shame of it all, is so few people understand the suffering that the Palestinian people have gone through that they just form their opinions on whatever headline they read. And again, I'm not excusing the Munich Olympic terrorist event. All I'm saying is a lot of people used that event to formulate their entire opinion on the issue. And it's just like, when you don't have all the information, obviously you're going to think sides are super simple and you're going to pick the side that you think is good. It's just like, I don't know. It's bad PR. It's bad PR.
Brought widespread international condemnation.
You see, we are against all this violence. The PLO is against it. You know it. And we have declared it many times. But we have to remember.
See, that's the funny part, though, is he said, yep, we agree, we shouldn't be killing anyone, there should be no damage being done, no conflict, no violence, but, you know, that's what he says, but, he said there is no excuse for violence, but, so what is his excuse for violence?
And to look to this case from all its views.
Again, that's exactly what I'm trying to say too. Like, so long as you look at this purely through the lens that Israelis have given us, you will obviously see the Palestinians as evil. But once you look at this through the Palestinian perspective, you will realize that they are not the ones in power to do harm against others. That's the thing. The Palestinian people have no power in this world, so they're incapable of pretty much doing anything.
The PLO still accepts responsibility for raids inside Israel. But violence continues on both sides. This took place in Aziyeh, southern Lebanon, after an Israeli air raid.
See, that's the sort of thing that's just skipped over. It's like an Israeli air raid killed so many more people, maimed so many more as well. But because the only headline people saw was the Munich Olympians or whatever, even with all the evil that Israel enacted against the Palestinians, people never sided with them because they never heard about these awful events that just happened in the darkness one day.
Over 100 were killed, men, women, and children.
Jeez, I can't believe we're just watching a real surgery right now, too. This is... I don't do well with this sort of stuff. Oh my gosh, it's real flesh. Oh my god, I can't watch it. Yep, I think those are just some dead kids right there. Yeah, I think this whole video is actually going to be demonetized.
Similar military actions have been taken over the years by Israel against Palestinian camps in other Arab countries.
See, that's what I'm saying. Similar actions have been taken against other Palestinian refugees in other countries. Like, it wasn't even enough to kick them out of their own homes, but then they were bombing the camps that they were fleeing to.
In some cases, following guerrilla raids inside Israel or against Israeli interests elsewhere. Violence breeds hatred. Retaliation brings only further retaliation.
See, this is a very good statement too. Violence breeds hatred. Retaliation only breeds more retaliation. That's the whole cycle this region has fallen into, is violence breeds hatred. Retaliation only breeds greater retaliation. And we've been in like 70 straight years of retaliation at this point. So it's just like, it's impossible to get out of this. Once you understand how impossible of a situation this is to solve. Because now they've just been exchanging tit for tat for like their entire history pretty much.
An eye for an eye is often paid at high interest rates in our day and age.
An eye for an eye is often paid with high interest rates. That's another little clever saying right there.
Events of these last years have made the world painfully aware that the Palestinian people and the recognition and implementation of their rights are the key to any solution in the Middle East.
The Palestinian people and the recognition and the implementation of their rights are the key to any solution in the Middle East. So recognizing the plight of the Palestinian people is the key to peace in the Middle East. I'm just going to leave that there for you guys. I'm going to see if you can debate about that in the comments, but I think there really is a shred of truth to that if you solved this problem, I feel like a lot of the other conflicts in the Middle East would go away as well. And it all starts with recognizing the suffering of the Palestinian people. You don't get over this issue if you are unable to recognize the Palestinian suffering.
To any solution in the Middle East. They are there, they are a fact. Like it or not, no formula can be found, no resolution implemented, which does not take their inalienable rights into consideration.
The Security Council expressing its continuing...
Yeah, I guess that's a good word for it. Inalienable rights. That is what the Palestinians are upset the most, that their inalienable rights were alienated, I guess.
Concerned with the grave situation in the Middle East.
From the creation of the United Nations to this day, no topic has been the subject of more debates and deliberation by the world body.
I wonder if that's true. No topic has been the subject of more debates in the UN than the Israel-Palestine conflict. I wonder if that's still true. It feels like it could still be true. It's just I never really thought about that.
Following the 1967 war, the Security Council adopted the all-important Resolution 242.
Peace in the Middle East, which should include...
However, the PLO found this resolution objectionable.
The United Nations Security Council resolution.
Hang on, so the PLO found this resolution unacceptable, so I wonder what about it they found unacceptable. Again, it seems like they had so many options to accept some sort of truce, but they just never did. And I don't want to put the blame on the Palestinians for this, I just want to understand the decision-making behind it more than anything.
242 is not accepted by the Palestinians for the following reasons. First of all,
Oh, okay, we're going to have it explained to us. That's good, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. It's not accepted by the Palestinians for the following reasons. Let's hear them out. Why did they not accept this peace agreement?
First of all, it ignored the national rights of the Palestinians.
It ignored the national rights of the Palestinians, so it probably did not guarantee that they were going to get a state of their own. That's probably point number one, and if that's true, I completely understand why they rejected it.
The second thing, it didn't mention about the national rights of the Palestinians, and
it didn't mention about the national... I feel like that was point one already. Did I miss something, or I feel like that was already said?
Look to the matter as if it's a conflict between the Arab states and and Israel. Although the...
So that's interesting. So it didn't really consider the Palestinian plight to be... So that's interesting. So they didn't really consider the Palestinian plight to be one that would be solved by the Palestinians themselves, but rather the other surrounding Arab states, whereas they clearly wanted to have their own state and have that be part of the solution. Again, that's pretty fair. I can't really blame them for denying that.
Crux of the problem in the Middle East is the Palestinian cause.
Oh man, look at these flags. Hang on. I want to look at these flags. All right, this looks like Laos flag, actually. Oh, I know I'm getting distracted now, but this looks like the Kingdom of Laos old flag. I hope that's true.
Geneva, December 1973. Since the first session...
Hang on, was that Scotland's flag back there? You know what? I don't need to get distracted by this. Somebody go back and tell me if that was Scotland's flag.
Session of the Geneva Peace Conference, several significant developments affecting the Palestinians have taken place. United Nations General Assembly
Is that also Henry Kissinger? I think it is.
Resolution 3375 requests the participation of the PLO in all peace efforts on an equal footing with all other parties. Israel remains opposed to this on the ground that, among other things, 242 calls for negotiation among states, and the PLO is...
See, so again, that's such a frustrating stance for the Israelis to take, that they can't accept anything because it negotiates with the PLO, which is like the evil group to them, you know? Like, it's just like, well, if they can't negotiate for themselves, who else is supposed to negotiate? And that's the point, is they don't want anyone negotiating on behalf of the Palestinian people, because then they get what they want, and Israelis don't get what they want. It's so clear that they're trying to deny them everything that they're asking for.
Not a state. And also because they have always refused to deal with groups which they see as bent on destroying Israel.
Which I guess is sort of fair. Like, all right, the PLO probably did want to destroy Israel, but was it even capable of it? Probably not really. It's just like you're writing a treaty with these people. Obviously, they don't like you. You know, like most treaties are signed between parties that were just fighting against each other. It's like, what if we denied Japan's resignation from World War II simply because we didn't recognize that they were playing nice with us? It's just like you're perpetuating the problem. They are. That's exactly what the Israelis were doing. They were just trying to draw out this issue for as long as possible, and that's exactly what they got to happen.
In 1974 and 75, the General Assembly proclaimed its resolutions 3-2.
Oh wow, this is a list of all the countries that voted in the UN. Somebody zoom in on this and see if there are any interesting countries here. I bet there's a few fun names.
3-6 and 3-3-7-5. Which respectively affirm the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people and recognize the PLO as its representative in the deliberations of the United Nations.
Again, so they all just voted in order to recognize the PLO as the official voice of the Palestinian people, which again feels like we already had that established, but just so that we could say to Israel, no, you have to accept what the PLO agrees to, or something along those lines. It just feels like Israel was stalling this whole process.
It is mentioned in the United Nations Resolution 3236 that the Palestinians have their own inalienable rights, including their right for self-determination.
Okay, so they voted in this that the Palestinians have inalienable rights to self-determination. And I think that is like the big key to all of this, is that none of this gets resolved until there is a self-determination that takes place. And without a self-determination, you will never have peace here. Again, it all goes back to what the Palestinian people want.
For the sovereignty and independence, for their repatriation to their homeland, and we see to it that this settlement should take into consideration all these rights, national rights of the Palestinians.
Yeah, see, that's the most frustrating part of it all, is all the Palestinians were really asking for was just like equal rights as everyone else. And that is the thing that they were denied over and over and over again.
United Nations, New York, November 13th, 1974. Yasser Arafat comes to address the General Assembly.
وإنني أتوجه إليكم أيضا أن تمكنوا شعبنا من العمل.
Are there any Arabic speakers that are actually hearing his accent or his like dialect specifically right now? Like, this is probably the only actual example of Palestinian Arabic we've heard this whole video. So I'm just curious if there are any Arabic speakers. What does this guy sound like to you? Does he have like an accent? Like, what is the Palestinian accent to other Arabs? I'll never be able to know personally, but I'm curious if anyone listening right now can understand what he's saying and is hearing the differences in his voice.
عودتي من منفاه الإجباري.
I appeal to you further to aid our people's return to its homeland from an involuntary exile imposed on it by force of arms, by tyranny, by oppression.
That's a pretty inarguable statement he just made. He's just asking to return to their homes after being forced out at gunpoint. You know, he's not really asking for that much.
في وطنه ودياره وتحت ظلال أشجار مزارعه حرا سيدا.
I know I don't speak Arabic, but I feel like this guy does speak Arabic differently than what I'm used to hearing. I don't know if that's just like his speech pattern or whatever, but he does sound like a very specific sort of Arabic.
So that we can regain our property, our land, and thereafter live in our national homeland, free and sovereign, enjoying all the privileges of nationhood.
Dang, Israel's seats just empty for this, like they didn't even bother showing up. See, that's the thing, is like they're not even trying. They clearly don't want to work with the Palestinians.
Today I have come bearing an olive branch and a freedom fighter's gun. Do not let the olive branch fall from my hand. I repeat, do not let the olive branch fall from my hand.
See, I feel like that's so prescient too, because I feel like that is exactly what has happened to the Palestinian people over my lifetime. The olive branch has fallen from their hand. Like, they used to actually be open to peaceful resolution to this conflict, but it's gone on for so long that this olive branch has just withered, and all that's left is the freedom fighter's gun. You know, very pertinent statement he just made right there.
Homelessness, stateless, even without an identity card. We haven't flags, we haven't states, we haven't a home, we haven't anything concerning human being rights.
See, again, that's it. They just do not have a guarantee for their basic human rights. That's all they want, is guaranteed basic human rights. That is what this whole conflict is about, is them being denied human rights and them fighting for their human rights. Which, you know what, I guess I'm falling more on the side of freedom fighter than terrorist at this point.
But accepts misery in this diaspora. But we kept very important thing, our will and determination.
That is fair. There's one thing that you can say about the Palestinians. They have never lost their will or determination. That is very true.
And for this, we are still existing. We started from zero, but we now are the important number in this area, in this formula.
We are not after 10 years or 3 years or just solving a problem like this. No, we want our rights, we want our land, we want to go back and live in Palestine.
Yeah, again, you couldn't ask for a better summation of this problem. We want our rights, we want our land. Like, that's all they want, man. And that's all they're not gonna get, too, which is sad.
We are struggling to regain our own identity. This is a divine right that is given to us by God.
But again, look at all these kids. They're putting up the peace symbol. Like, you know, these people didn't actually want war or conflict or anything. Look how happy and smiling they are. They just wanted peace. They just wanted to live their lives in peace without being threatened, you know?
I think that the Palestinians, they are well educated and well cultured. They can take part in all fields of human activity. I mean, scientific, arts, literature. I think as a small nation, we can take part.
Again, that might not be true now, but again, that was very true back then, that they had such an educated population that they really could have taken part, like an active part in the world, had they been allowed to.
This is my feeling, and I am ready to leave everything here.
Like, there's another universe where Palestine is like the most utopian civilization in the Middle East, you know?
And go back to my home. Really? Everything. I am ready to start from the zero, even.
See, I don't know if I believe that quite yet, that they are ready to start from zero. Like, if they are ready to start, you know what, don't include that either.
Do not deny the people who were original owners the right to go back. Do not deny the Palestinian per se the right to perform as a human being.
Dang, look at this Palestinian woman. I don't want to say much about her, but I just don't think women are allowed to wear this provocative of clothing nowadays here. Maybe I could be wrong again, but I'm so amazed by the freedom that they had to wear whatever clothes they wanted to back then. And how they actually took advantage of it, and no one really even had a problem with that. Like, you don't see men yelling at these women to cover up or anything. It's really just like a culture shock almost.
I am a human being. If the world wants me to abide by the morality of humanity, then they must treat me as a human being.
United Nations, New York, November 29th, 1978.
Cumplimos hoy en esta ceremonia con una de las tareas específicas.
We are complying today in this ceremony with one of the specific recommendations that the Charter mandates to our organization.
De uno de los pueblos que forma
The recognition of the fundamental rights of one of the peoples which constitutes man.
Dang, this room is like empty while this guy is giving this speech. I don't know if that's important or not, but it seems like no one showed up to the office this day.
The inalienable rights that in countless documents are demanded for the Palestinian people.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we commemorate for the first time the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. The General Assembly in 1974 began tackling the political aspect of the Palestinian question. In that year, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 3236, which reaffirmed the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to self-determination, the right to national independence and sovereignty, and the right of the Palestinians to return to their homes and property.
So that was what it was agreed upon in that voting that we saw earlier, is that they were assured their inalienable rights, their rights to self-determination, and their right to return to their lands, which is just like, I don't know, I can't actually imagine that ever taking place. I don't know. It's just like something's gotta give before everyone can get their way here, you know? Like Israel and Palestine cannot coexist because part of their entire being is denying the other their existence, you know? And it goes both ways.
The General Assembly established a committee on the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people.
Dès le départ, certains ont choisi de préjuger des travaux du comité.
You know, I'm happy to see the Afghanistani representatives are showing up. That's funny.
En prétendant que celui-ci ne serait pas impartial.
Right from the start, some chose to prejudge the committee's work and declared that it would not be impartial.
You know, it's pretty funny that people already knew that this was not going to be an impartial decision. Like, I know it's the UN, but obviously there are greater powers at play here. And I'm just, a lot of props to this guy for just saying straight up, like, we don't trust this. And, you know, I imagine that's what he's saying at least.
In fact, in order to encourage the contribution of all sectors, one of the first actions of the committee was...
Oh, what's this newspaper say? A new framework for the Middle East? Oh, we can barely make out the map. I wonder... I wish we could get a closer look of that newspaper.
To invite all member states to participate in its work as observers. An invitation repeated in 77. The committee, in due course, made its recommendations after careful and objective consideration and in strict conformity.
Hang on, that guy didn't pour his glass of water. He spent all this time picking up this thing and trying to pour it, and then he just didn't pour any water in his cup. I know there are bigger issues at hand here, that was the detail that I picked up on.
And in strict conformity with its mandate.
You know what? I think it's really funny that this guy from Senegal was like the guy heading all this, though, or at least the one who seems like he was speaking the most, you know? Like, that really is like the point of the UN.
These recommendations were based on widely accepted UN resolutions and the following principles.
La question de Palestine est au cœur du problème du Moyen-Orient.
Man, all the people that they're cutting to, like this Vietnam procession, every single country feels like they were included in this pointedly, you know?
1. The question of Palestine is the heart of the Middle East.
Yeah, freaking shout out to this guy. I forgot what his name was. They said it earlier, but like props to him for what it seems like fighting and standing up for Palestine.
Problem. And no solution could be envisaged without taking into account the rights of the Palestinian people.
Again, very true. No solution can be arrived at without recognizing the Palestinian people's rights.
2. The realization of these inalienable rights would contribute to a solution of the Middle East crisis.
Again, very true. Solving the Palestine problem would solve so many other issues in the Middle East as well.
3. The PLO, as the representative of the Palestinian people, should participate on an equal footing with other parties in all conferences on the Middle East held under United Nations auspices. 4. The inadmissibility of the acquisition of territory by force and Israel's obligation to withdraw completely and quickly from all territory so occupied.
Yeah, again, this is pretty much what doomed his statements, though, is actually telling Israel you have to remove your settlers from this land that you took from us so that we can have it back. It's just like, yeah, that was obviously never going to happen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to rain on everyone's parade. It's just like, so long as you wait for Israel to be satisfied with this deal, you'll never have the deal because they benefit from just putting it off for so much longer. It's honestly like unsolvable, the situation at hand now.
The recommendations were widely supported in the Security Council, but not endorsed due to the veto of a permanent member.
Due to the veto of a permanent member. I wonder who vetoed it. I wonder. The permanent member of the Security Council was only like 5 or 6 or something, right? I guarantee you I could guess in one guess who vetoed it.
However, the Assembly subsequently endorsed the committee's recommendations by 90 in favor, 16 against, and 30 abstention. In its second report, the committee reaffirmed their validity and the urgency of implementation. The Assembly reconfirmed its endorsement by an even larger vote. Although Israel and some other countries have persisted in opposing implementation, we are convinced that these recommendations would form the basis for a just peace.
You know, they're not wrong about that. They're actually not wrong about anything. Like, they do doubt that Israel would participate, but they do also agree that this would lead to some peace. And I think it would.
Some have pointed out that no reference is made to the right of Israel to exist as an independent state. The answer is that this is not within the mandate of the committee. Their worry is unfounded, since at no stage was the independence of Israel questioned, inasmuch as it is a member state of the UN.
Yeah, I feel like that is a pretty weak argument, that they wouldn't agree to this because there are no things saying that Israel has a right to the land as well. I feel like that's just what's accepted as true now, you know? Like, you don't have to say that Israel has a right to its own land because it clearly, obviously does. It has the right and the ability to protect that right. We're just trying to establish that the Palestinian people also have rights. Which, hey, that's the title of the video. I guess the Palestinian people do have rights. It's just like, you know, you're not trying to take away Israeli rights. You're just trying to ensure that these people also have their rights as well.
I must add that Israel was created by United Nations Resolution 181 of November 29, 1947. That same resolution made provision for a Palestinian state.
You know, that is very fair, that one, the UN did say Israel had a right through its own founding through the UN, and two, that they should be able to agree on the things that they established in that ruling, if that's what gave Israeli statehood legitimacy. You know, like if you said in the same agreement, Israel is a real country, but also so is Palestine, it kind of invalidates your whole argument and your whole country if you go against that agreement, pretty much. So, I don't know.
Which Israel does not wish to recognize.
I am a human being. If the world wants me to abide by the morality of humanity, then they must treat me as a human being.
Wow, see, we're in the credits already, but that is probably like the best summarization of like the Palestinian mentality. I'm gonna play that again for us.
I am a human being. If the world wants me to
I am a human being. The very first and probably most important aspect of the Palestinian argument is that I am a human being.
abide by the morality of humanity, then they must.
If you want me to abide by the morality of humanity, then
treat me as a human being.
Then treat me as a human being. It's not any more complex than that. All you have to do to get past this problem is treat the Palestinian people with the rights that they are entitled to. And those rights are the very same ones that Israelis are entitled to as well. When you deny an entire people their rights, that's how you get horrible situations that exist in Palestine today. But alright, hang on. I also want to read this little end clip right here. Produced by the United Nations at the request and under the guidance of the UN Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. All right, so we read that at the beginning, but I guess that kind of cements, I don't know if this is propaganda or not. Is the United Nations able to make propaganda, or is this just educational, you know? Like, what's really the difference at the end of the day? Like, this is definitely trying to affect my political leanings or my political opinions, I guess, but only by providing the full story, you know? It's like, I guess it is propaganda. It's just not bad propaganda, I guess. I don't know if I have an answer to whether or not this is propaganda. I think it definitely is, but I don't know if that affects how I feel about the statements that were included inside of it. But either way, I think this was a really good history lesson on the Palestinian conflict or the Palestinian struggle. You know, there aren't a lot of sources that will actually go in and argue from the side of the Palestinians quite like this did. So I am really impressed with the United Nations for putting together what feels like a sort of unbiased. Obviously, it is still biased towards the Palestinian people. Obviously, it was made by the Committee on the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. But again, all their rights are the same rights that everyone else is also obligated to under the UN Charter. I think the big takeaway from this is all you have to do in order to start a productive dialogue between Israel and Palestine is you have to recognize the Palestinian people's rights. That's all you have to do, and then we can start working on peace. And that is all Israel has refused to do in this whole time. Besides that, I don't know how much more I have left to say. So all I'll say is this: if you enjoyed what I did here and would like me to continue watching this sort of material, please go to the Internet Archive and drop them a donation. The link is in the description. Internet Archive is where I get all these old programs from. So if you want to support what I do here, there's no better way than donating to the Internet Archive. Oh, and there's one last thing I guess I want to talk about, and that's that this was the very first red video I ever chose. And I chose this very specifically because I wanted this to establish how I speak about the red issues in the future. I wanted this to illustrate how that is what the red category is. More than any other program we'll watch on this channel, this one is what I think encapsulates the idea of the red channel the best. Which I don't know exactly what that means. I'll let you guys decide that. All I wanted you guys to understand is that this is kind of the guiding light for me when it comes to the red videos on this channel. So with that, donate to the Internet Archive, and I'll see you next time. Cut to black.